What's up, folks? Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, here today to give you some UFC DFS picks, lineup advice, and strategies, FanDuel and DraftKings for UFC 250, Nunes and Spencer, and try to give you some tips on how to take down one of the big tournaments this weekend, whether it's the Millie Maker on DraftKings or the big UFC tournament over on FanDuel. So before we get started with the picks and strategies and advice, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. That way you're notified when all of our latest videos are released. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. And if you have any questions about this slate, about UFC DFS in general, or just overall DFS strategies, comment below and we'll get back to you before the slate starts. Now it starts at 4 p.m. Eastern on FanDuel, 6 p.m. on DraftKings on Saturday. We'll see if FanDuel adjusts the time, but just something to keep in mind. Also know that we will be going live on Twitch 4:30 p.m. Eastern, maybe earlier now if FanDuel doesn't adjust their lock time. But you can follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/OccupyFantasy, and that way you're notified when we go live on Saturday, where we answer all of your questions live. Remember, Twitch subscribers do get access to our Discord channel, where you can talk with all of our members and followers about various DFS sports, but then also get access to us, Occupy staff, especially for this upcoming UFC DFS slate. And again, that can be found in the description below, twitch.tv/OccupyFantasy. All right, so this slate is going to be very interesting for one of the biggest, actually the biggest MMA tournament we've ever seen on FanDuel and DraftKings. It's the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, 1 million to first. It's going to be a pretty chalky slate. Now, granted, we almost had it, but now it seems like it's okay again. We're not getting a replacement fighter last minute where a 7K fighter is minus 300, so that's nice. But we still have two massive favorites that will skew ownership, especially in these large field contests, and actually in all contest types. And how we approach that ownership for those two fighters is really going to determine whether, and the outcomes are going to determine whether the Millionaire Maker is split with a handful of people, maybe solo, or 100 people. So let's jump into it. So what you see on screen here is our MMA model, our UFC DFS model, occupyfantasy.com. Accessed, as always, under the Occupy Model Occupy Model menu under MMA. And again, this is free until North American sports return in full. So let's look down here for a second, and what you'll notice, the 5-round fight, the main event, Amanda Nunes, is minus 625 on the money line. Yeah, minus 625. There's also another favorite, Sean O'Malley, who's minus 500. And it's not like we have any line movement against these two fighters either. Nunes' line has moved 65 cents in her favor since lines opened. Same for O'Malley, 65 cents. These are two huge favorites. They're also going to be the most popular on the slate. You look at we call it a KO percentage. In reality, it's a finish percentage. The odds that the fight doesn't go the distance based on betting odds and some other metrics. Nunes up at 82%, O'Malley 69%, very nice. But given their knockout chances and their probability to win, expect both these fighters to be extremely, extremely popular, especially Nunes in the main event where she could potentially get 5 rounds worth of action. So at $9,400, $9,300, $23, $22 respectively on each site, starting off your lineup with these two fighters automatically locks you into one type of lineup construction that's going to be duplicated heavily. So what we have to figure out is, how do we handle this for large field contests? A lot of our members, followers, Occupy community follow the satellite strategy that I used to win the million last year on DraftKings, and they have a lot of tickets to either the UFC Big GPP on FanDuel or the Millie Maker on DraftKings. And if your goal is to try to get a massive prize, we have to get creative with our lineups for this particular contest. And if Nunes and O'Malley are 50% each, using those two in our lineups automatically reduces our chances of having a significant ROI, 6 figures or more. So what do we do here? So the first thing that stands out to me when looking at this is, actually, let's sort the model by DraftKings price. Nunes, O'Malley, both the most expensive fighters, right? Going to be the most popular. But then we have a handful of fighters underneath of them. Stamen, Minifield, Burns, Bird, Magny, Garbrandt, Hooper, that will definitely take some ownership, but nowhere near the 50% that Nunes and O'Malley take, maybe more. So using a combination of these fighters instead is one way to get unique compared to those lineups that have both Nunes and O'Malley. Another way is to drop down even further and have a more balanced approach instead of a quote-unquote stars and scrubs approach like we see in other sports where you use Nunes, O'Malley, and then a bunch of 6K fighters or low 7K fighters. That's going to be already duplicated, very popular. We can get different and have just as much, if not more, upside by playing these fighters in the middle together. Let's sort again by OF index. Remember, that is our proprietary metric, takes into account more than 50 metrics. It gives you one easy to read number to rank every fighter on the slate. And in reality, the way I describe it is it's a combination of probability to win plus likelihood to be very high scoring when they do win. So you'll notice here off the bat, one way to get leverage, one way to find high upside fighters is this Sterling and Sandhagen fight. Now, anytime we see a fight where both fighters are in the top 5, it indicates that it should be high volume, fast pace, or tons of takedowns, knockout potential on both sides. And in this case, a lot of UFC DFS players will look at knockout or finish percent chance, and you combine that with money line, that correlates pretty heavily with ownership. So Sterling and Sandhagen, despite just having roughly a 25% chance each to get that elusive inside the distance finish percentage, whatever you want to call it, knockout chance that adds up to so many points, both Sterling and Sandhagen should go overlooked because of this. If we sort by knockout potential, finish potential, I mean, these guys are, Sterling and Sandhagen are at the bottom half of the model. But they're at the top of the model ranked by OF index because of the high takedown percentage, high significant strike percentage, that regardless of how this fight turns out, our model anticipates that these two guys will be very high scoring regardless of who wins. So if you like Sterling, our model likes him more than Sandhagen, then sure, use a little bit more of him. If you like Sandhagen, that's fine, use him. But point being, using one of these two fighters in your lineup is going to be very important in our eyes to get leverage off Nunes and O'Malley, and also have high upside because of how we think the fight's going to play out, how the model thinks the fight is going to play out based on the underlying metrics. All right, so that's one way, one thing to take a look at. Another thing to look at is the number 3 spot here, Charles Byrd, 8,800. So odds are, if you're using Nunes and you're using O'Malley, that you're not going to be able to fit in Byrd either. And for that reason, we think Bird's going to go way lower owned than those two, despite him having 47% knockout chance, pretty good chance of it finishing in the first or second round, according to projected rounds, and his high model ranking, OF index. So again, using Byrd instead of Nunes or O'Malley, or in place of one of the two, again, that's more leverage. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for unique ways to create lineups. And even if we use Nunes and or O'Malley, figure out how do we leave money on the table, how do we find lower owned fighters to fit in with those. And again, this strategy that I'm talking about is more so for the millionaire maker, for the 57,000 player GPP, 100K to first on FanDuel. If you're playing leagues, you're playing smaller contests, you're playing satellites, you're playing multipliers, you obviously don't need to get this crazy. The larger the field, the more you have to scale your quote-unquote craziness to make your lineup stand out, be unique, not duplicated hundreds of times. All right, so we talked about Byrd, we talked about the Sterling-Sandhagen fight. If we sort by DraftKings salary once again, Stamann, who is the number 3 highest priced fighter on DraftKings against Kelleher, based on what we've read, based on what we see, based on the model, Kelleher will likely be a popular underdog. 7,100, got some money moving in his favor. If you look down here, 29% KO percentage is the highest of the bottom 5 or 6 fighters. You know, really out of the bottom 10 fighters, he's top 2 in knockout potential. So a lot of people are going to flock to Kelleher. So naturally, if we use his opponent, Stamann, who no one's going to use really at 9,100, despite being a minus 275 favorite, it's because he has a small knockout percent chance. And if we sort by OF index, Stamann's middle of the pack, which means that this should be low volume, even if he doesn't knock out Kelleher. So a lot of people will shy away from this fight. Now, the odds of Stamann being the optimal line is pretty low, but again, 25 to 30% based on knockout percentage, some rare occurrence where he gets a high volume. And we get huge leverage against these top fighters. So really what we're saying is, while the odds of these second-tier fighters, Stamen, Bird, who else? Magny, some of these other fighters, scoring more than Nunes or O'Malley is pretty low. When it does happen, you get massive leverage against the field in these large field contests. And that's the type of thinking we have to think about. So even if it's not getting as crazy as actually playing Nunes or O'Malley's opponents, who naturally rank at the bottom of the model here, Spencer and Wineland, you don't even have to get as crazy as using them. Yeah, sure, 20% chance that they end up in the ultimate line or the optimal lineup. But there's also the chance that even if Nunes and O'Malley win and score decently, or even pretty heavily, 100 points or more, if there aren't a ton of upsets at the bottom, then using those two fighters in your lineup may not even be optimal. Getting those mid-tier fighters like we recommend could be the more optimal approach. So a lot of things have to go your way. One, those two fighters have to win significantly. Two, you have to get upsets. Three, you have to not be duplicated by tons of users. So when you think about it that way, it actually sounds pretty tough and pretty unlikely that a Nunes and or O'Malley lineup ends up at the top of one of these big contests by themselves or only tied with a couple of people. And that's how you have to think about these types of contests. Let's see if there's anything else we want to discuss here before we get out. The one fighter that stands out to us in the lower tier is Evan Dunham. Now, Herbert Burns, both these fighters rank in the top half of the model, which is normally a good sign you want to target that fight. It's not as great as say, Sterling and Sandhagen, but still, Dunham, 7,300, top half of the model. And again, we think Burns at 8,900 might be one of the more popular fighters after Nunes and O'Malley. Dunham provides pretty good leverage, 10 to 20% ownership, whereas a lot of people will go down to Kelleher, who we talked about, maybe some of these other fighters. Our model likes Dunham a lot. If you're dumpster diving, looking for a low-priced fighter as an underdog, because the underlying metrics are pretty solid in the instance that he does win. Well, again, it's a 1 in 3 chance that he wins. When he does win, our model thinks he'll be a pretty good chance of being a top 6 scorer on the slate. So again, this model will be updated up until lock as betting odds change, if any news changes. Hopefully we don't get any replacement fighters before the 6 p.m. lock on DraftKings on Saturday. Again, I encourage you to follow us on Twitch. The link is in the description below, twitch.tv/Occupy Fantasy, so you know when our live Q&A will be on Saturday. Remember, our Twitch subscribers get access to our Discord channel where you can chat it up with all of our members. Remember, this MMA model that you see on screen is free until a major North American sport returns, occupyfantasy.com. And just one more request, go ahead and subscribe below. That way you get access to all of our latest videos here on YouTube when they are released. We're going to be doing more of these more often as PGA returns, as these MMA slates continue, as the League of Legends combination slates resume on the 17th of June. So you'll be sure to do that. Again, give us a thumbs up, comments below with any questions. All right, again, follow us at Occupy Fantasy on Twitter. Follow me at BrianJesterFF. Appreciate you listening. Good luck. It's going to be fun. MMA has become one of the best DFS sweats since these sports have been suspended. And we hope you have a good time sweating out, and hope someone out there listening to this video takes down a big prize on Saturday. So again, good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.